Hello and welcome to ThoughtCast, the SPJIMR podcast, a conversation about business and leadership between a corporate head and an academic. Today we have a special episode as two alumni are talking with each other. Our corporate leader is Mansi Tripathy, Vice President Asia Pacific and Middle East for Shell Lubricants. Mansi is a seasoned leader with over 2 decades of experience across industries. She currently handles a portfolio of $2.5 billion dollars and over 1,200 employees. She's also on the board of Jaslok Saudi Arabia, Hankook Korea, Shell Japan, and Shell MRPL India, and sponsors 7,000 plus women network for Shell Asia Pacific. She is amongst the Economic Times fastest rising leaders in India 2017 and part of the World Economic Forum Top Women Innovator 2018. Before Shell, she worked with Gillette and P&G. Talking to her today is Professor Ratika Gore, who teaches communication, design thinking, and critical thinking, and is also the head of alumni relations at SPJIMR. Ratika is also a bad junior to Mansi at SPJIMR. Ratika, I hand it over to you.
Thanks, Vinita. It is such a pleasure to be here to chat with Mansi today. I must mention, not only do I know Mansi as the inspiring leader that she is, she's also an alumnus of SPJMR, my senior from MBA campus, and of course, a very dear friend. I've known her right from the hostel days and been in touch since then through the various countries that we've overlapped staying in. Mansi, I see you as a successful leader, a nurturing mother, a supportive partner, and a wonderful friend. And you also manage to carve out time for yourself. You seem to have it all. And there seems to be always a smile on your face and a sense of serenity. With so many roles played so well, I'm sure it is much about taking the right decisions, sometimes the tough decisions. There is much to learn from you thoughts today. Mansi, you want to say a quick hello and then I go on to the first question.
Hey, thanks, Ratika, and thanks, Vinita. Absolutely a pleasure to be on this platform and so happy to be part of the Thoughtcast series of SPJ.
Thank you. So, Mansi, the first question I'd like to pose to you is that are there any life experiences which may have shaped your views towards work and life and may somehow percolate into how you make decisions?
Yeah, I think many to share, but I think the one which kind of like is an anchor for me roots back to when I was a very, very small child, and I'm Kashmiri by my birth. And as you know, with the whole Kashmir exodus situation, we were in a situation where we had to flee overnight, leaving the property, leaving our people, sense of insecurity, financial, as well as, physical space wise. And when, everything was in chaos and we were kind of like just about to leave, as a small child, I felt very uncertain, anxious, afraid, if I have to really use that word. And I remember at that time my dad holding up and saying to me that there is nothing to worry because you know what? Life is extremely beautiful and we have this moment and we need to cherish every moment. And I think that just brought in, sense of solace, sense of meaning, sense of perspective, and has been kind of like a holding, mirror for me all the time. And when I think about problems at work, at life, bad boss, bad days, sales target not getting met, losing some stuff or personal situations I'm in, I think that, kind of like provides perspective in life, about the real issues which we have and how lucky and blessed and cherished we are in many, many aspects. And also that whole thing that every moment needs to be cherished and enjoyed to the fullest, irrespective of whatever is happening, because life is so beautiful. So I think that has kind of like really grounded me in every moment, every decision, and I feel very grateful for these experiences which I have had.
Wow, Mansi, that's a very deep thought. And in fact, what you're saying is that when you have such a deep experience so early in life, it kind of enmeshes in your worldview and everything else kind of dwarfs in front of such situations. Thank you for sharing. That must not have been easy. So, moving on to, like you said, some decisions are tough and dilemmas and how they become smaller compared to what you've experienced. So, what, according to you, are tough decisions and what have your guiding principles and mantras been?
Yeah. So I guess, I'm also inspired a lot by Gita, and one of the shlokas, loosely translated, basically says that, you're destined to make decisions, and these decisions make your destiny. And I think that's kind of like, again, as a business professional, you are dealt and thrown into lots of decisions every day, and probably that's the reason why you are needed in a business situation. I think decisions being decision, I think talking about the toughness of the decision typically comes in with the flavor when there is a risk you are getting into, or there are a lot of gray zones, or the uncertainty part of the whole piece makes it really, really tough. And professionally, I think I can divide the decisions I have taken into, pure financial decisions, and of course the people decisions part of it. And I think from a life point of view, there is this whole third bucket of all the personal decisions which you take. And you kind of like talked about, what are the models or the guidelines or the principles which one can use. I think on the professional decisions, if I look at the array of questions which get thrown to you, which is, do you invest in X versus Y? How much do you invest? Do you launch in a particular country? Do you enter a new initiative? Do you acquire a new company? A capex investment to be done, and so on and so forth. I think for that range of kind of like questions which you deal in on a day to day basis, if I have to isolate them, some decisions are kind of like, very strategic, and they go much, much, much beyond financial. So, for example, should we be investing in sustainable efforts? And in most cases, in the short term, you will be actually truly investing, but that's the right money to be spent, or digital tools or capability. So they really fall in that bracket of like, right thing to be done, and irrespective of the short term ROI, you just go and do it, because fundamentally they are the right things to be done, and you are creating the future. And typically, I think those are getting, or I get taken much faster, much easier, despite the fact that there is no immediate financials or a short term piece to be looked into. Our second set of decisions, which are more, they could be a financial risk, and I can think of so many times, for example, when I entered Shell into the lubricants business, what I saw was a lot of, the brand money, or the SPA as we call it, was getting spent into, almost 150 small activities through the year. And one of the big decisions I took was that I transferred almost 70% of that money into a mechanic program, because there was a fundamental insight around, mechanic is like the priest to the god, which is the consumer. And while we can potentially spend on the channel or the consumer itself, till the time we haven't really convinced the mechanic in this category, we will not be able to move further. Now, there was a business insight behind it. There was a gut, but that was a kind of like a tough decision I took, basis, some sound maths and financials and consumer understanding, and convincing the stakeholders behind it. But very, very, good to see that year on year, it has become one of the biggest program across industries, close to about, call it 100 million mechanics across the region, which we have in that database. And, we are able to then correspond, work, partner, and sustainably grow. And, that has helped grow our business pretty significantly along the way. So it's really then the fine balance between looking at the data, looking at the business insight, and then doing your maths behind it to make some of those decisions.
So,
But yeah.
Mansi, sorry, just to come to, because I just thought I'll quickly bring it all together. So you're saying there are two types of decisions right now. You mentioned one is non-financial, right? Is most about strategy and doing the right thing, right? A bit of ethics and foresight, right? And the second one is talking about is which has financial risk, and there a lot of data research, even if it is gut, it's based out of certain understanding of the context. So those are the two types you've identified up till now.
Indeed, indeed. Yeah.
Okay, great, great.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, if I had to then put it into your question on, guidelines or whatever, and, looking at some of the bad or wrong decisions I have made along the way, the four principles which keep shining again and again is that it should be based on a solid business insight, number one. Number two, I guess, the depth of underlying assumptions need to be tested very well. And specifically, when I look at a lot of wrong decisions, we look at the assumptions and the models, and they're usually maths multiplicative models. And hence, it is really important that the underlying assumptions get tested very well. Number three, I would say, is that the what if scenarios need to be really thought of, specifically around competitive moves or external things which may go haywire. Does your decision hold true in some of those what if scenarios, and have you really solved for the risks which are associated with it? And I guess the fourth one, which is, to what you said, is, it should have a very good balance between what the head says, what the heart says, and what the gut says. And, kind of like the meeting of those three is really, really critical. If and once those happen, typically they will fall in the good decision and happy when you look back. And when
Well,
I've
that's a tall
seen,
order, Mansi. That's a really tall order.
yeah, but of course you don't do all that. Some are like, as we say, decisions which you need to take very fast on the go, and some which you have to really mull and ensure that it's passing those criterias.
Sure. So you were talking about two or more buckets, people and personal, right?
Yeah, so let's pick up the personal one because I think that's very interesting as well. I think on the personal side, again, if I have to reflect on the decisions right from which college do you go to which person do you marry, when do you have kids, how many jobs to shift, the countries to live in, etc., etc. I think, and then so many micro decisions which you keep taking. I think the one framework which has really evolved and helped me is of choices and consequences and embracing consequences. So I'll have a very quick story from my life. This was in Boston, Ratika, when I was with PNG and working in Gillette, and I was on a split family arrangement, with two small children, 7 and 9 at that time, and global job. Working, kind of like morning 6 to next day somewhere later and things like that. And in one of those moments, I had a morning board meeting in which I had to kind of like showcase the acquisition economics. I was waiting for my nanny to come, and it started like, snowing like crazy. And I was waiting for the nanny, and I had to also keep shoveling the snow. And in those moments, I was like literally crying and saying, "What am I doing? Over here alone with two small kids and trying to manage all of that." And I guess in those moments, it was like, what are my choices? Choice from, do I continue in the job, to alternate job, to an alternate job in another country, and quit my job? Yeah, I think all those choices flashed in my head. And then I quickly came to the fact that I needed and I wanted this, the integration job of a $56 billion acquisition which had happened, and I really wanted to experience an international experience of being in Boston. And with those choice, the consequence of shoveling and being a split family and raising kids is a consequence. And what I was fighting was not embracing that consequence. Yeah. So I think that kind of like really, really brought in that with each of my life choices, I would have to look at what are the consequences, and most importantly, embrace those consequences. Because, for example, when you take these senior positions, there are a lot of consequences on your personal side. And I think the trick is that, yes, you consciously know them, you embrace them and actually thrive through them. And I think that has been kind of like my personal model of handling some of the personal decisions along the way. And I'll pause again before we shift into the third bucket which we have been talking
Yeah.
about.
No, but Mansi, again, I can say I hear you. I can understand how tough it must have been. Boston is cold, and I know what a suburbia in US can be. It's not. the easiest to bring up as a single mother. So I think the very powerful part which you have mentioned is embracing consequences. If you want it, you say, you know what, I've chosen it and I will embrace what comes with it. I think that takes a lot of guts and willpower. So really, really thanks for sharing that. So maybe then now let's go to the third bucket, which is people. I'm sure that's not easy either.
Yeah, I think professionally, honestly, Ratika, though that part is probably the toughest from a decision making point of view. And again, you face with, what should be the size of your organization. And, in big companies, you're continuously also thinking of what will a reorganized organization look like, reporting lines, who should be promoted, who do you hire, performance management, as well as potentially, worst case also who you should not continue as part of your organization. All those decisions kind of like are for and center, and the more senior you go, a lot of your time and energy does get spent into organizations, talent, and people based decisions as well. And there probably I guess the framework which I have used repeatedly is something which I learned in earlier days of my career, was a principle based decision making, which is on which principles are you basing your decisions. Yeah, so the situations or the characters can change, but really rooting yourself to principles. For example, you have two individuals, and we had one incident where, for example, the individual had used a company card for a personal use. Yeah, and in one case, the person continued, in another case the person did not. But if why? So yeah, so you drill down a little deeper, because in the other case the person had gone to another country, was completely robbed of his corporate credit card, and there was an actual reason why he had to use the company credit card for doing some of the personal work. Whereas in certain cases, so I think it's really really understanding what circumstances the individual is, and what principle are you really rooting yourself in making those decisions basically, and being true to the intent, and also clearly communicating that both to the individual involved as well as to the organization, so that you keep building the culture part of people always taking the right decisions and also imbibing the close principles to their heart. Yeah, so I think that really helps over there.
But Mansi, I can imagine just a thought that came to your mind. You say principle based decision, but then you're allowing for context, and that must have made it tough. When do you follow through? When you not? When does the context come in? And I think that's something which can be the tough part in this whole. But let me go to the next question. So they say good decisions are made with experience. Unfortunately, the times that we are working in right now, it's fast evolving. There's a lot of uncertainty. Sometimes we don't have experience to create those good decisions. You have to maybe lean on something else. So Mansi, how do you any thoughts on how tough decisions can be taken, how dilemmas can be conquered in such uncertain times?
Yeah, last few months slash time has been nothing but uncertain, and obviously has built a lot of resilience for the organization and personally for me as well, in terms of further debating through these dilemmas, and being much more resilient in terms of the decision making as well. I think, I mean, I can pick up the latest COVID experience to kind of like help answer your question. And as it initially started happening, we started seeing our communities in issues, our channel, our distributors having credit issues, and also obviously society at large. On the other hand, there was a complete dire crisis within the company in terms of the business absolutely collapsing. And what do we do from working capital management and cost, as well as the organization kind of like really looking at what do we really really do. So I think, I mean, one thing which we immediately did was that we created, we said, the biggest thing which we need to do is ensure that there is a sense of unity in that entire organization. And and we're talking of like in from Middle East to Korea, 1,500 odd people. how do we really unite them together to a single motive and a single purpose? So created like a 5C model, which was, care, cost, cash, continuity, and comeback. Yeah, and we started talking the same language to everybody, that our first and the foremost path is care for yourself, for your family, for your society, for your community, and put a cap on the money. But we said anybody has any idea or what they want to do, absolutely welcome, and almost really empower to the last individual in terms of what they can be doing for care, and enabling that. And lots of ideas came from food drives to vaccination drives to what we can do in terms of financial help to creating communities of help and mental health and so on and so forth. And likewise on cost and cash, I think people themselves started bringing in ideas on what we can do to cut or preserve or redeploy. But the biggest breakthrough came in the area of comeback, where we said, guys, our current business is collapsed to almost, we were like, in the last year, we had 3 months where we did almost 20% on an average to what we were doing in a month, which is kind of like a big dent to the business performance. And the individuals in different markets started saying, what if I do this contactless door to door service? What if I have a JV with one of the car riding companies who do self servicing, etc., etc. Yeah, so we started getting whole host of ideas in terms of how do we create alternate business models very quickly, which can then be in tune with the customer needs, at the same time be in line with our business insights, and fast forward them. And also expanding beyond, our core business was lubricants, to say what we can do in the area of services, what we can do in other related kind of like fluids, beyond lubricants, and expand ourselves as a frictionless supplier rather than a lubricant supplier. And I think while some of these ideas were churning in the background, because our base business itself was doing so well and we're focused, we never had the time and energy probably to pivot and put energy and focus on that. And I think this really really brought in a fresh set of, I would say, energy. And I guess, if I look at the business right now, we obviously did last year even better than what we finished 2019, which was quite a commendable, I would say, results than any of us expected. And even as we are going through that uncertain times, we had a really bad phase in India and Indonesia. Vietnam, as we talk, are in a very similar situation in that sense. I think that 5C model has really helped us anchor. And more importantly, I think that sense of unity in the whole organization, to say, okay, we are on the same path, we are united together. These are some of the areas we can work on. They have the full enablement to do that. And that decision making getting really, really percolated down, so that it doesn't come up for decisions, but how do we really enable and empower right to our front line through this model to be taking decisions. And I think that has been one of the biggest breakthrough in the uncertain times, where the what we call as the approval authorities and all of that, we've delegated it really down, which further enables that faster mechanism, as well as we've seen more right decisions, I would say, coming out than ever before.
Wow, thanks, Mansi. Very heartening to see that, ultimately it's all about betting on your people and showing you care. And, that's when ideas come in and they rally together, and that's where the troops start working for the organization. So before I go to my last question, Mansi, any quick tips, maybe just bullets on why do you think managers make bad decisions or delay in decisions, take time to take decisions? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think fundamentally my belief, Ratika, is like nobody wakes up in the morning and says, "Hey, I'm going to make a bad decision," or "I'm going to be a bad manager," yeah, or
Yeah.
I'll be known for taking bad decisions. Yeah, so I guess if I put, even including my wrong decisions or bad decisions, they are typically in that area where pressure, I guess, pressure to perform or pressure to do something fast, risk which is typically involved along with it, lack of depth, I think the hard work part of it, as well as probably not looking at a 360-degree or involving right people in the decision, uh, usually would be my hypotheses or my personal experience on why I would have taken a wrong decision, or why I see sometimes wrong decisions getting taken.
So no scope of sheer dumb luck. That's it. Okay, so let me switch gears a little bit. I started off by introducing you, Mansi, by saying, I've seen you as an involved parent, a wonderful partner, very good friend, and you take time out for yourself. I believe you took up running some time back, and you also kind of, broke the internet on that. I know there was a lot of coverage on you. So you take time out of yourself for yourself also, and this is all apart from, of course, a successful career. So the question to you, Mansi, is how do you manage to have it all?
No, Ratika, you're being kind, and I guess I can say absolutely the same words to you in terms of your personal growth as well. Probably the only way I can answer it is that as I've been, and it is a journey. Yeah, I mean, it's not in one day. Is where I've taken some very hard stances on these are the big rocks. So, for example, health, probably when I was in late 20s, 30s, was never in the picture. Yeah. But then, it slowly emerged and said, hey guys, this is a big rock and I have to invest in this. And, clearly declaring it to everybody and putting it in my calendar, and, come rain or shine, being there in the morning for whatever, it was running, and now I've pivoted to more cycling and yoga or whatever it is. It's really saying, and then everybody knows, my family, my friends, my office, my colleagues, and they would know that, yeah, I mean, this is really important for me. And in the morning, and if I'm traveling, people will make the agenda in a manner that they know that Mansi needs that morning 1.5 hours. So make the calendar and schedule accordingly. Yeah. So I think it is really declaring it to yourself and others that this is my big rock, or if there are important events personally or with my children, they are clearly in my calendar almost a year in advance, and I plan around it in that sense. And then obviously then everything falls on what is movable and what is not movable, which probably helps me to at least stay focused on what matters to me the most, and then everything else then can move around as needed.
Wow, it's a very powerful thought again, Mansi. I mean, of course, we've all know about finding the big rocks and putting them in place. But I think the larger one for me is the wisdom to know which rock is now no more movable. I think that's a big one for all of us at any life stage to learn. Like I think I need to make health as one my unmovable rock. So just a quick one. This is I had said that was my last question, but I will take the liberty of asking one more. I was listening to you. It looked like everything is planned, and you say I accept my consequences. Do you think you're a little hard on yourself? Is it a let? What makes you smile? Where do you find joy? Any thoughts on that part, which is slightly taking it easy a little bit? Does that come at all in your plan of things? Sorry.
I don't know in terms of yeah, no, I think my one of the quotes which my father said was be a carpenter but be the best. Basically saying, whatever you touch and whatever you do, put in your best effort, put in your best thing. And that kind of like, again, has been a very important guiding force for me personally. And I try to do my best. Obviously, sometimes you succeed, sometimes you don't, but I think doing that well gives me joy. So I think it's kind of like a self-fulfilling cycle in that sense, to me.
That's the true Karam Yogi, right? You find joy in what you do. And I see that you referred to Gita before also. So I think there's a reference there also.
Indeed. So I think there's some kind of like semblance. I think I thoroughly enjoy my work, and I thoroughly enjoy things which I do, and that whole piece of like cherishing each moment. And probably that's what brings me joy, and I'm happy with that in that sense.
Thank you, Mansi. You've been extremely generous with your thoughts and examples, and letting us learn from some of the frameworks that you applied. And on that note, Vinita, back to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ratika. Pleasure being here.
You were listening to SPJIMR's ThoughtCast, produced by Vinita Dwivedi, edited by Amulya, supported by Funny, Rishabh, and Kaushik. Thank you for listening.